5 FM reminds our listeners that the views and opinions expressed on this show are those of the host and guests and not necessarily the opinions of the owners of Global Communications Network and the operators of this radio station.
Today can be the turning point in your life by making a simple decision.
Fundamental questions of navigation. Where am I? Where am I going? And how do I get there from here?
I invite the leaders of our planet to ask themselves these three questions before they make any crucial decisions.
But if you don't make decisions, you're going to stay right where you are.
We are all map makers.
We are in a time of transition.
If we're going to change, we have to change the direction that we're going.
Our planet needs leaders who know where they want to go.
When we change the direction we're going, then we want to make sure we're going in the right direction.
Leaders who can see the big picture.
Because if we're not, we're going to either go backwards or we're going to stay where we are.
Recognizing the psychological and the spiritual shifts and changes that need to be made, often from the inside to the outside.
To be able to shape your future, you have to be willing and able to change your paradigm.
Complex journeys require navigation. The path to the truth is one such journey. This is your GPS. Hairstyling services provided by J.D. Edwards Salon and Spa, Palmdale Shopping Plaza, Madera Street. Accessories provided by Chevette Williamson Jewelry. Standout jewelry for standout women. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to GPS, Global Paradigm Shift on Global 99.5 FM. I'm your host, Michelle Malcolm. And as always, it's a pleasure to be in your company today. Thank you so much for tuning in and making GPS a part of your afternoon. So, on today's show, we are going to be talking about a topic that is getting a lot of attention as of late. It's particularly being championed by our very own Prime Minister, Philip Davis, and for good reason, because we are, as a low-lying state, very vulnerable to the fallout that happens as a result of climate change. And the Prime Minister has been spending quite a bit of time lobbying leaders from around the world and organizations, etc., to take a closer look at what they can do to help to mitigate against climate change, because it is directly impacting the nations like the Bahamas that are the least responsible for climate change as it relates to our carbon footprint. And so, as you know, the Prime Minister has been traveling and spent some time in New York City and participated in a forum that was held by the New York Times, in which he sat down with the president of the World Bank and the managing director of the IMF, discussing climate change, debt, and how the two impact each other. And some really interesting revelations came out of that meeting. And so my guests and I today are going to be talking about some of the highlights of what was said at that meeting and how it relates to us here in the Bahamas and our ability to better manage our national debt, at the same time benefiting from the carbon credits that this country is so rich in. And so my guests today are, at least here in the studio, I don't know if C. Allen is on this yet. I guess he'll be joining us soon. But here with me in studio is Cassius Stuart. I was just saying to Cassius before we went on air, I had no idea he was going to be on air last night talking about this very same topic. But he did be on the headlines last night talking about the very same topic. And ironically, he and I had spoken since yesterday afternoon. about whether or not he could appear on my show today to discuss this topic. So here we are. Welcome back to GPS Cassius.
Michelle, it's always a pleasure. You know, when you call, I just have to come running
Man, don't do it.
because you know how we go.
I appreciate that, man, a whole lot.
Absolutely.
Okay, so before we dive into the conversation, the Office of the Prime Minister put out a report yesterday, a video vignette highlighting some of what took place at that meeting. And I wanted to begin the show today with that video, and then we would a little later on break it down and go deeper into the talk, because the talk itself was about 46 minutes long. And so what I did was I knew we wouldn't get through the full 46 minutes in one session. So I figured let me just pull some clips that we could chew on today, and then perhaps do a part two at some time in the future where we look at the entire presentation. But let's go to that first clip in the lineup, Jason, which gives us a quick overview of what was discussed, and then we're going to get into it in detail.
Prime Minister Philip Davis says quickly evolving climate change threats may have upped the ante on the developed world as impacts on small island developing states begin to more closely align with the self-interest of the world's largest economies. Prime Minister Davis was addressing the New York Times Forum on Climate Change in New York when he detailed the difficult scenarios that could present.
Well, look at these industrialized countries. Think about it. A report says that if climate change and the consequences will continue the way we are, the world GDP loss will be about 18% within the next, 10, 15 years. Think about migration. We become climate refugees. It is said that there's about 3.5 billion persons in vulnerable countries. And if they are impacted, as I did at Dorian 3 years ago, we'll become climate refugees. You see what the migration is doing now in Europe. It's impacting the political dynamics in most of these countries. Look what has happened in Central America. Over the drought that has hit it over the last several years. The borders of the United States speaks to that. And that too will have impact on the political dynamics here in the United States. So if you don't do anything, your own self-interest ought to be heightened.
The Prime Minister was alongside the leaders of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, also discussing the debilitating debt the Bahamas and many of its neighbors are compelled to absorb as the world's historic response, loan offers, keep them in a holding pattern.
Why would you want to lend me more money to make it more unsustainable for me?
It appears there's an ally in that pursuit. Kristina Georgievas, the managing director of the International Monetary Fund on climate financing, lamenting the inaction of the world's most powerful countries. She says there are solutions that both sides can benefit from.
We need countries that have caused the problem to meet their obligations. And the $100 billion, I'm actually amazed. We are in 2022. It should have been made available in 2020. We are apparently short $5 billion. How this is possible? We have been advocating for creating objective platform in which both public institutions, philanthropy, and private sector can step in. And let's take your example. You suck in carbon. Why not provide to your creditors not money, but carbon credits that have monetary equivalent? Is that possible? Yes, it is possible.
Keeping you in the know. This is OPM Press Now.
some of what you heard in that brief overview, you're going to hear again, but in a more extended version, because I actually went into the talk and pulled clips from the actual talk. So some of it you may hear again, but in more detail. So just from that brief overview, Cassius, what were your thoughts on the whole discourse as it relates to the position of the IMF and the World Bank and climate change and how it impacts us here in the Bahamas, et cetera?
Well, I think, first of all, before we, I guess, expound on what's going on in New York, I think we need some background as to where we are, how we got here.
Okay.
What is this carbon credits thing they're talking about?
Mhm.
Because most people hear it, but they don't really know what they're talking about.
They don't understand it.
So,
Right.
and so we have to basically give a foundation so we'll understand where we are.
Okay.
Okay. Some time ago they had what they call a Kyoto Accord, where world leaders met and they trying to figure out how do we address the amount of fluorocarbons in the air, which is the fluorocarbons which cause the blockage of heat. So when heat is evaporating, it's trapped in because of what we call the greenhouse effect.
Right. And
Okay?
that's why it's getting hotter and hotter and hotter every summer.
Because what happens is that the carbon and the fluorocarbons, carbon monoxide, all from combustion engines and so on, when that goes into the air, it forms a film over the Earth's atmosphere.
Mhm.
It traps heat in. And so what happens is the Earth is warming up.
Mhm.
And so that is why, so they got together in the Kyoto Accord to try to figure out how do we address this matter. They came up with an ingenious idea called carbon credits. Now, the way this is supposed to work was that each company in each country is allotted a certain amount of carbon credits.
Right.
Now, how this works is that if you are in the industrial industry and you're producing ceramics and you're burning, so you are permitted. If you're permitted for every 1 carbon credit you're given by the government,
Mhm.
you're allowed 1 ton of carbon credits to be pollution. Okay.
Mhm.
So if you allowed it 4 carbon credits, you allowed 4 tons of pollution get in the air.
Mm.
In other words, you'll have to pay for those credits. You're paying in advance to pollute, basically.
Which is why a lot of environmentalists have a problem with this whole discussion, because they're like,
so you prepay in to pollute, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so if you have 1 carbon credit and you are emitting 2 tons of pollution, then either you buy that extra credit from somebody who's producing less carbon emission
Right.
than you are. And so what you're doing is you taking money from one company to the next. And so they have the carbon credits, which you already paid for by the government.
Right.
So they'll buy it from your company. Okay, well, I produce an additional ton, so I need to buy 1 more carbon credit from Michelle company.
Right.
And so that I'll be able to say, okay, I am net zero.
Her company or her country.
Companies. The country gives each company these carbon credits, but you buy them from the company, these industrial countries.
Okay.
Okay. So you pay in advance for your pollution.
Right.
Okay. What's supposed to happen now is that now that you have carbon credits, in other words, if you go above what you're supposed to produce, then you're fined hefty fines.
Mhm.
The hefty fine supposed to be in some kind of whether it goes towards government furthering other projects to reduce emission products. So would they have something called net zero producing companies? Microsoft, Amazon, American Express,
Mhm.
all these companies trying to be net zero.
Right.
So what they do is that they will pay for companies in different countries to either grow trees or any form of environmental activities that reduce the amount of carbon, so that they would say, okay, even though we produce an X amount, we're paying somewhere else to reduce the same amount of carbon we put in the atmosphere.
Right.
So you prepay in to pollute.
Mhm.
Okay?
Mhm.
It's so very interesting. So what's been happening over the last 4 or 5 years is that companies in different countries has found a loophole in this whole carbon credit thing.
Okay.
So we know we have mangroves, right? And we know mangroves is a very important contributor to reducing carbon.
Mhm.
So we say to the people who in New York or wherever they are, okay, we are protecting these mangroves. we have 5 acres of mangroves that we're protecting, and we want carbon credits for that. So they would send us $300 million to protect the mangroves that we were already protecting. You understand?
I got it.
Or we're not going to cut down any trees in Ragged Island, Long Key, Crooked Island, Long Island, Cat Island. We're going to preserve those, and we're going to put them under a national forestry program. And because we're doing that, we want carbon credits. And so once you are certified by this agency, then they will send you carbon credits or send you the cash and so on. Because the program had become unsustainable because people were putting in carbon credits for programs that they were already doing, one, for trees that were already planted years ago, for forests that had been here for 1,000 years and they're cashing on it. You know, the agencies said, listen, we got to revamp this whole thing. So that's where they are now, trying to revamp this whole carbon credits, because it's been a money grab for a lot of countries and companies, because they find a way to squander it and find loopholes around it. For the Bahamas per se, you know, how do we benefit from these carbon credits? You know, they do exist. There's a lot of money because these companies are paying billions and billions of dollars every year. How does the Bahamas benefit from carbon credits? What we need to do is we need to look at what is one of the biggest fingerprint of carbon in the Bahamas. That is airline planes going through in our airspace, right? Now, if you fly from London to Germany on most of the airlines, from Delta and American, they have on their websites, do you want to pay for the carbon credits that you're using? Okay. So you could prepay for the carbon credits that you personally use, and that'll go towards companies in certain countries that are authorized or been approved that are environmental friendly. So in other words, there are companies in Europe, all over Europe.
But that's still ain't benefiting us.
I'm going to get there right now. And so what we should do now is that we know that we have one of the most heaviest traffic around the world in the Bahamas airspace. All airlines flying over our airspace, even though we don't get this significant tax that we're supposed to get, on their websites, they are paying companies that are reducing carbon emissions. The thing is, we don't have any authorized companies in the Bahamas.
Right.
You understand? So this is where now entrepreneurs, and this is where people now need to wake up and say, listen, how do I get involved in this carbon emission reduction program? Whether it's planting more trees, whether it's protecting the environment, whether it's whatever we're doing, whether it's even with our dump. Once you are certified, and you are certified with these international agencies, these airlines that are flying our airspace will send you money.
But I know I'm sort of jumping ahead of where I wanted to eventually get here, but since we're here now, but isn't the government now, am I incorrect in my understanding that the government is now looking at legislation or considering some sort of system whereby those carbon credit payments will go to the government as opposed to individual companies within the country? Isn't that being considered?
Well, around the world it's done two ways. All right. The major companies that are causing the pollution is paying the countries.
Right.
However, there are small and medium enterprise companies that are being paid themselves. So there are logging companies that are paid in 2 years, $52 million, because they say they're protecting logging, they're not going to log X amount of forestry. And that company is paid, not their government, the company.
Right.
Okay. So it depends on however we shape this now. You know, we could shape it where the government benefits, or we could shape it where the government and the people benefit. And I think it may be better for us to shape the whole argument where the individual people who are on the ground working themselves can also benefit. But knowing us as a people, our government never really looks out for the people. It's always, they get their hand full of people who they could push this to and so on. But you have people who have been in the environmental game, perhaps people who are picking up trash, planting more trees, and all sorts of different programs. If you are certified and registered, then you could apply for carbon credits, and you can get credits based upon your activities within the environment. Now, some say that we don't have that much heavy fingerprint when it comes to carbon emission. We do have carbon emissions because we have a lot of cars and we have a lot of airlines flying through our airspace and so on. So there is a carbon footprint. However, what I think Davis is trying to do is he wants the industrial countries to give us money, and what the IMF is talking about is to pay off our national debt.
Yeah, we're going to get into
Right.
that because I actually
So-
put some clips from the New York Times
Yeah.
talk with
So
regard to that.
What the whole argument is all about is now that the IMF, who basically holds a lot of our debt, the World Bank, who holds some of our debt,
Mhm.
what they're saying is if countries are now putting together this scheme to pay off these carbon credits and their money floating around, then why not we get in the game, and instead of we getting the money derived from the Bahamas, once you say, okay, you get X amount of carbon credits, we could put that on the debt. So in other words, she said in the statement that it has to be monetized. The carbon credit has to turn into a monetary, because the IMF ain't interested in your carbon credits. They want money. Okay.
Mhm.
So they want you to convert that carbon credits into money, but they want to take it off the top. So if the Bahamas is allocated $100 million in carbon credits for whatever activities we do. So what she's saying is instead of giving the money to the Bahamas, just give it to us.
Take it off that debt. You jumping ahead. We can get to that. I actually pulled a clip with her, more of that clip with both of them,
Yes.
where you're going to hear their entire response as it relates to what we're discussing. But just so people can understand why we are especially at risk as a low-lying state, not just in terms of the intensity of hurricanes, which they believe is a direct result of this problem of climate change. But another problem that we will have is the rising sea levels, because once the heat intensifies on the Earth, it also starts to melt the ice at the poles.
Mhm, mhm.
And that melting ice, which there's evidence it's happening. This is no fairy tale. This is not a made up conspiracy theory. The ice is melting. So if that ice continues to melt, that causes sea levels to rise.
Mhm.
And we are already a low-lying state. So if the sea levels continue to rise, eventually we're going to be underwater.
Mhm.
And so people need to, I just wanted to explain that so people understand.
But there are countries like the Maldives that suffered heavily from this rising sea levels, and several countries in the Pacific that really was affected. There is no island nation in this region that has really been affected by sea level as yet. It has been predicted that it will. Whether it does is another story. However, I do know that we have the effects of climate change. There are different arguments from different scientists as to the strength of these arguments. We know that the Democrats push heavily, the Republicans doesn't, and so who do you blame? Depends on who's in power. They push this agenda. And so, we got to understand, Wantu, that, we have all been bad to our environment. I've been to China many, many times, and there are days when I go in China when you don't even see the sun because it's all pollution.
Yeah, it's pretty bad over
Total
there.
pollution.
Pretty bad.
And so, whether China signed on to the Kyoto Accord is another story. However, the Bahamas is affected, I think. But I also, I hear the Prime Minister speak about the fact that climate change is, our national debt is basically
He said
directly
about
tied.
40%, I think.
I beg to differ in some instance because even last hurricane we had Dorian, it was estimated that it would cost about $3 billion to restore Abaco. Did we spend $3 billion? You understand? So the question is, you can't attribute that to the debt if we didn't really spend that. If it was an estimate, then you if we had spent that out of the national purse, then you could say, okay, then that is a part of the debt. If people now donate monies towards the building of homes externally, you can't attribute that to the debt. You understand?
Mhm.
And so, if you're trying to sell a program or you want money, sell the right one, because you're making us believe that the debt that we have is attributed to storms. Our debt we have is because we had a lot of irresponsible governments that wasted a lot of money.
Mm.
And so that's why we have a heavy debt. Now, we do have some environmental issues that contributed some, but the amount he is attributing to is not really so, because our governments, and we all know this from time immemorial, that we've wasted a lot of money. Every election comes by, we know that there's money wasted. That's what caused the debt to go up.
Right.
However, this climate issue, while we do spend money for restoration, it's not in the amount that he's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to make that clear, and I thought our reporter should really dig in more to address that matter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to take a quick break. You believe it's 2:30 already? We just get started.
Already?
Yeah. We're going to take a quick break. And then on the other side of the break, we're going to dive deeper into that New York Times forum, because there were some interesting revelations that came. And I didn't even get through the full. I knew we wouldn't be able to cover all of it in this one show. So I really didn't even get through the full 46 minutes. And just the pieces that I was able to get. Very interesting. So stay with us. We're going to continue this conversation with Cassius Stuart. And who knows, maybe C. Allen can join us and maybe not. He was supposed to be here. So we'll see what happens. But stay with us. We'll be back after these words from our sponsors.
Understanding your microbiome, also known as your gut ecosystem, can change everything you thought you knew about nutrition, digestion, immunity, and metabolism. Keeping your gut ecosystem healthy and balanced is essential. Ultimate Microbiome by Longevity was specifically formulated to optimize this ecosystem. It provides the advanced support your gut needs through prebiotic, probiotic, and postbiotic supplementation. Our unique blend of probiotics includes Lactobacillus and Plantarum, healthy bacteria that can help prevent harmful bacteria from taking over your gut. Increasing your gut's population of beneficial bacteria creates a more balanced gut microbiome, which has been shown to aid in weight loss, skin health, sleep, mood, and may even help with seasonal allergies. Ultimate Microbiome also promotes the production of postbiotics. Postbiotics are key to help regulate your gastrointestinal health. To enhance digestion, Digizyme Multi-Enzyme Complex, a blend of 5 specific enzymes, has been added to Ultimate Microbiome. It can help break down food so your body can better absorb nutrients. Plus, we've added our proprietary I-26 hyperimmune egg powder to aid in the elimination of disease-causing gut bacteria and help your body balance its immune response. Ultimate Microbiome, the scientific, proprietary, and holistic approach to gut health that helps optimize your body's entire gut ecosystem. To learn more, contact your Longevity associate.
Welcome to Sunshine Auto, the hardest place on the planet for a rim fix and tires.
We are your auto superstore for rims, Lexani, Azaras, Trueform, Western, Lux, Fuel, Tracklight, Tough, Rough Racing, Velocity, Mud, All-Terrain, and low-profile tires, cars, homes, and commercial window tinting. At Sunshine Auto, we put God first and customer is king.
Glasses love.
To stay healthy, it's crucial to make sure you get the nutrition you need every day. But it's difficult to get all your recommended vitamins and minerals from food alone. Even in the United States, 94% of people are deficient in at least one nutrient. Beyond Tangy Tangerine 2.0 by Longevity is a simple, convenient, and affordable way to help your body get the essential nutrients it needs. It's an advanced plant-driven multivitamin mineral complex that contains certified organic whole foods, trace minerals, and antioxidants. BTT 2.0 supports your body's natural defense system with a proprietary blend of energy-boosting and body-loving nutrients, plus prebiotics, probiotics, amino acids, and enzymes that support digestion. With an unusually high ORAC score of 8,000, you get even more antioxidants to help combat free radicals that can cause damage to your cells. But to get the most benefit and value from any multivitamin, your body must be able to break down the nutrients so you can fully absorb them. Otherwise, they'll just pass through your system without doing any good. Beyond Tangy Tangerine 2.0 was specially formulated with synergizing cofactors to ensure you get maximum nutrient absorption. Beyond Tangy Tangerine 2.0 is the easiest way to give your body the balance and complete daily vitamin mineral supplement it needs for optimal support of your overall health. To learn more, contact your Longevity associate.
This portion of GPS is brought to you by Tiki Bikini Hut at Junkanoo Beach. great food, cool tropical drinks, and family fun in the sun. Welcome back to GPS Global Paradigm Shift on Global 99.5 FM. Michelle Malcolm here along with Cassius Stuart. And we're hoping to get C. Alan Johnson on the line any minute now, trying to get him the correct information to log in. And as soon as we can get that to him, he will be joining us. The telephone numbers to call, 326 0271, 326 0271, 326 0272, 326 0272, and the WhatsApp line to send us a message via text. Okay, finally, is 801 0271, 801 0271. So, Prime Minister Philip Davis took part in a forum that was hosted by the New York Times, and he made the case for the Bahamas and other low-lying states like us as to why industrialized nations and I see him coming in, and lending institutions like the IMF and the World Bank should, let me just add him to the stream. There we go. Hi, C. Alan.
How you doing?
Sorry about that. My phone kept auto-correcting every time I tried to send you the link. It just kept changing it, so my apologies for that. Okay, so Prime Minister recently took part just a couple of days ago, yesterday or the day before, in this one-day forum put on by the New York Times, in which he sat down with the managing director of the IMF and the president of the World Bank, and they were discussing carbon credits, climate change, and he obviously was trying to make the case of how we could reduce our national debt, reduce the amounts owed to organizations like the IMF using carbon credits.
Can you pause there a second? He's been making an argument for being paid for carbon credits and offset. What the IMF lady did, she tried to do a little swing on our prime minister and said, "We're not going to give you any money. We want to take it from you."
We can get into all of that. We can get into. I actually pulled some clips from the talk, but I was just setting the stage with our audience as to what they're going to be hearing. According to the gentleman who hosted the event, $630 billion of climate finance was deployed just last year, and yet that is not nearly enough when we consider the level of debt that is being experienced around the world. And he said that by the World Bank's own calculation, $90 trillion in this effort is needed by the year 2030. So we are not even close to being on track. Now, what I found interesting is that the World Bank leader, when pressed, could not admit his position on climate change. He refused to answer the question as to what his position was on climate change. Now, remember now, this man was appointed by Trump. And I want to play that clip, and then I want to talk about if he can't admit what his views are on climate change. It speaks volumes to me, and maybe I'm reading too much into this, but it speaks volumes to me as to whether or not the World Bank has to answer to any external forces that may be influencing, I'm trying to be very politically correct as I say what I say here, their decision making as it relates to this topic. Let me go ahead and play clip number one. I want you guys to listen carefully to this exchange.
I don't need to tell you, there has been criticism of the bank and your leadership of it over the last several years. In recent months alone, even since the Biden administration has been in power, The UN, the Biden administration itself, development experts, climate experts have all continued to say that the bank is not doing enough. And ever since President Trump appointed you to lead the World Bank, there have been questions about your perspective on the climate science itself. Now, I mentioned Vice President Gore was here earlier today, and I don't know if you heard, but he referred to you in his remarks publicly on stage here as a climate denier. Would you clear the air? Do you accept the scientific consensus that the burning of fossil fuels is dangerously warming the planet? Let's just start there with some level setting.
Okay, that's a odd spot to start, but I'm very happy to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation. I was the first invitee, and I'm happy to be here. You know, and I don't know all of the instances that you're talking about. I've been very pleased to have super strong U.S. government support across the board on the initiatives that we've been taking. Some people that are critical, I think, are unfounded. They may not know what the World Bank is doing. Some of them are simply not involved in the efforts that are going on to actually have an impact. People fly to meetings and then make pledges, and then they're gone. And so I really think it might be useful if I just go through what the World Bank is doing. This has been a huge effort for the bank under my leadership. The climate financing from the World Bank has grown rapidly. We're, as you know, by far the biggest funder among the international financial institutions. Add up all the institutions, the IMF and all the other multilateral development banks, and the World Bank is more than all of them put together. What we've done is try to have a logical way to have impact. One thing I've observed is most of what was going on before was talk. And so I'm very happy to have this format. And the reason I came is because you're using the word impact. That's what we launched in the Climate Change Action Plan of the World Bank. That's what I presented at Glasgow. That was very well received by the world community, by the US government, and so on around. So I really want to kind of push back on the premise of that. As far as various initiatives under the Climate Change Action Plan, we're putting together really impressive diagnostics called Country Climate Development Reports that are coming out one by one for countries, showing their path to better mitigation and adaptation alternatives. From a financing standpoint, we had a record fiscal year in FY22, $31.7 billion of climate finance by the World Bank Group alone, which is very large within the global context. Half of that is for adaptation. So the bank has been a world leader in focusing attention on resilience, on adaptation and change. We have recent CCDRs out on Sahel, which is really being hit by changes in climate. We are a leader in the methane sprint, methane being one of the most potent of the greenhouse gases. And so we are not only funding the effort, but then putting together the steps that countries can do to address gas flaring, to address land use emissions, and waste, which is one of the big emitters of greenhouse gas emissions. And I could go on with a list of all of the various methane projects that the bank has. This is one of the most impactful ways to have traction. But you know, the core you started with is how do we finance all this? And one of the, and we'll probably talk more about that because that's maybe the purpose of the conference. But the challenge, I think, for the world is to recognize there's a global public good that countries can't finance themselves. Yes. And that's where the focus of the World Bank has been, in putting together the stream of funding from the global community into impactful projects in mitigation and adaptation.
Absolutely. I want to talk about all that and more in detail with all our panelists. I also want to give you one more chance to directly address former Vice President Gore's claim that he made on this stage that you were a climate denier. His words.
So very odd. I've never met him. He's not involved in the efforts that we're doing. He may present as a climate person. I don't know what impact that's having.
Okay. Let me just be as clear as I can. Do you accept the scientific consensus that the man-made burning of fossil fuels is rapidly and dangerously warming the planet.
I don't know if everyone wants to comment on that. What we are doing is having impactful projects that reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We have a mission of a World Bank that's powerful.
Will you answer the question? Is that...
I don't even know. I'm not a scientist, and that is not a question so Al Gore can put. I don't know why it stays on the stage. What we need to do is move forward with impactful projects.
Y'all remember that that nursery rhyme when we were growing up? Here we go round the mulberry bush, the mulberry bush, the mulberry bush. Here we go round the mulberry bush, we all fall down. That clip was 5 minutes and 45 seconds of this man dancing around that question. That is the leader of the World Bank. If he cannot even allow to come out of his mouth that climate change is a real problem, if he can't even allow himself to say that, to me that speaks volumes about how realistic it is to expect the World Bank to come up with any real solutions if the leader of the World Bank can't even say out of his own mouth, yes, I agree that climate change is a problem. So is this a pipe dream for us to believe that these international monetary agencies are really serious about trying to find ways to monetize this whole climate change carbon credit system to help to reduce debt? What does that whole discourse say to you guys?
Well, Michelle, can I jump in?
Please.
I mean, I don't think it's the World Bank's position to be the leader in climate change. The World Bank basically to lend countries money who broke.
I understand
who
that.
spend their money on foolishness, and that's like countries like us. I think though, like I said when I opened the show, there are two different schools of thought on this argument. There is a school of thought that, listen, the world is coming to an end pretty soon and we need to do something right now. And there's also a school of thought that says, listen, you all are exaggerating, over-exaggerating, overblowing this thing up. So there are two different schools of thought. And he may be from the school of thought that say, listen, you all are blowing this up out of proportion for whatever reason. And so, when you look at, I remember 20 years ago, I was talking about climate change and environmental issues and the deforestation of the Amazon and how the Bahamas is going to be underwater. 20 years later, we ain't underwater yet. So at which point, all is going to kick in, we don't know. Now, our fingerprint is definitely doing damage to the earth. Our fingerprint, the burning of fossil fuels, like he said, methane, our dump out there, what you call them, the national dump. When you bury the dump, it emits methane. Methane is an even more dangerous gas than carbon when it comes to destruction of the Earth's atmosphere. And so, all of us are doing a bad job, not just them. But I think, whilst he was skating around this whole thing, it's not on him, and the onus is not on him or the IMF. They're just trying to figure out how they can position themselves to make more money from it. And so I wouldn't even put two cents into what he was saying, even though he couldn't answer the question. But for me, it's how do we as a country, be more responsible when it comes to the environment, and we around the world talking about how the world is irresponsible when it comes to the environment, when we can't take care of our own beaches. We have to have people from America come to clean our beaches. We got to have foreigners come and make sure, take care of our we throw trash on the street. We dump cars, we dump fridge, we dump bed any and everywhere. And so, I think Brave David should be making sure that we could keep the Bahamas clean before you go around the world trying to beg for money because of what they're doing. And so we got our own problems here in the Bahamas because we are not a clean people. We are not a disciplined people when it comes to environment. We're not a clean people when it comes to making sure that we don't throw trash anywhere in the country. And so we got our own problem. And so we gotta discipline our people here to do what we need to do to make sure that we could keep ourselves clean as well too. And so this issue about the World Bank and the rest of them, there is no such thing as a free lunch. And I want everybody who hears me to remember this. This is a law. There is no such thing as a free lunch. There's no such thing as a free dollar. There's a
Can I
cost.
second that?
There's a cost associated with everything. And
I need you to make it quick, Siam, because we have a call on the line. Actually,
go to the caller and I'll come back to this. Because
all right. Caller, welcome to GPS.
I thank you for putting me in this slot, and I enjoy. This is a wonderful conversation.
Thank you.
The question I would like to ask is, if this methane is being collected in the atmosphere, and a certain amount is collected, lightning when it strikes up, and it also strikes down. What are the possibilities, from your learned guess, of the atmosphere becoming explosive and detonating some of the nuclear bombs that we have sitting around, or some of the reactors we are playing with? Is that a possibility, or am I too remotely thinking?
No, I mean, what you're saying is it is a possibility, because now when lightning strikes, if you have, remember now, the dump that we have out there on Harold Road emits methane. The reason why the dump burns so long is because rotten garbage gives off methane.
Mm-hmm.
Methane is a flammable gas, and so when you have a lightning strike that may possibly hit the dump, that could cause combustion. While people may have manually
he's
so
talking
you
about
could
in the
cause
atmosphere.
combustion in the long run as well too.
Go ahead, Siam.
See, I think one of the things is that when we talk about carbon credits, carbon offsets, carbon trading, and the various different platforms, we need not to convolute and conflate various different things with it. As to your call as the statement, it's too long of a story for chemical blending that allows magnification of the heat, etc. But this explosion in the atmosphere is a remote possibility. It's a non-issue. But going back to the statement where you talk about the World Bank and the IMF, they are non-issues in the actual carbon, in the carbon story, in the carbon debate. Essentially, the World Bank and the IMF, more so the IMF, takes a role because climate change and global warming will have an effect on their loan portfolios.
Right.
In that respect. But when you come to talk about carbon emissions and carbon warming of the planet Earth, these are country issues. And the primary regulators of these will be countries, regardless of where the companies are. These are countries' issues. Now, we can't ignore the fact that companies have a significant influence through lobbying power, for legislation on and impact on the leadership of various different countries. Just let me first say that planet Earth has no problem. It's been here for billions of years, and will most likely be for billions of years later. The problem with global warming and climate change is the inhabitants of the planet Earth for this dispensation of our existence. The planet will heal itself once we get rid of the virus called man. And so this is a conversation about our survival, not the Earth's survival.
Mm.
And so when you begin to look at the contributing factors, I think Mr. Brave Davis does have it right in making the argument if he doesn't allow people like the IMF and the World Bank to redirect him into what it is that we have to do. And I would say and Cassius have some points that has to be taken in. And so the points is that this carbon trading, carbon credits, carbon offset conversation is not something that we have to have in isolation. And I guess you could go to the biblical principle of, take the mote out of your eyes before you talk about, take the plank out of your eyes before you talk about the mote in somebody else's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Bahamas has a lot of issues. In fact, the Bahamas' very existence makes us a carbon-based tax system. The government depends on carbon tax for almost every single thing, from our energy, from our cars running. Our economy is based on tourism model, and you will see that our emphasis is on the cruise industry. Let's use an example with one cruise ship. One cruise ship parked in the harbor of our harbor burns during their time here, emits as much carbon dioxide and other things as 1 million cars. I just want you to add 1 million cars, because essentially we have an issue because we don't have an onshore power type environment. So there's a lot of things that to have a certain level of credibility in the global marketplace, that we have to have a discussion. And I think so. My greatest critique of the PLP administration is the fact that they're talking more about carbon credits from an economic remuneration type environment, but nothing for the actual sustainability of us being able to do this. What I mean by that, let's take for example that we could get $1 billion a year in carbon credits, and I think what the lady from the IMF makes is an important point, because if you look at her point, is that where will your money be going? If it is going into the central, the central pot, what is it that the money disappear?
They can get lost again.
Yeah, so it doesn't go anywhere. So essentially, what it does, though, it creates a lazy money pit type environment for government, because where they have to come from growing the economy and economic development, they'll be like, oh, great, we don't need to do anything now. We have an extra $1 billion we account for. And so the fact is that the PLP has not made a statement for the fact that we have an existential threat to the Bahamas. Our very existence in the next 20 years or so, we could cease to exist. So carbon credit won't mean anything to us if we're not around. And so the fact is that means that money's coming from me, the money's coming in from that should be set aside. I've been advocating for 25 years. For almost 25 years, and the record would reflect that at times when I was having a debate on Grand Bahama with Bahama Rock and its impact on the environment, from the cruise port way before Cocoa Key and all the rest of these different things, and I argued against these, is that we were destroying the very environment for which we should be seeking to preserve the Bahamas. And so, it goes to the same thing where we have this conversation about aragonite, that people say we want to export it and sell it and give people money and all these other different things. And aragonite, the very billions of tons of aragonite that is produced in the Bahamas on a yearly basis, is a key component of us shoring up ourselves. And so I'm just simply saying that this conversation seems somewhat so insulated with opinions as opposed to data-based and a laid out, clear, articulated strategy as to the role we will play from a global perspective. Because it comes back to country. If we clean our house and actually show a strategy on how we're going to deal with transitioning to renewable energy, getting our fossil fuel, dealing with our tourism product, as one of the largest registry in the world for cruise ship, shows the hypocrisy of us screaming that this is poisoning us while we are licensing up to yesterday another ship that one of the major emitters of carbon into the atmosphere, and one of the most dirtiest of all industries that we have in existence in the world today.
All right, we have a call on the line, Cialan. Caller, welcome to GPS.
I would have been quite happy, Michelle, for him to continue his thought. JT calling in. But,
you sure about that? Cialan could be long-winded.
Well, I wanted to actually touch on something to Cialan. Touch on it very, very briefly. Hi, Cassius. How you doing, buddy?
JT, it's been a long time, buddy. Where you been?
A long time. Well, already still kicking my heels and thanking God for life.
Making all that money. Thank God for life.
Well, when you give it to me, I'll make it. What I wanted to say, both Cassius and Cialan have indicated or alluded to us first in the Bahamas leading by example. It is good that we are showing the big boys, the big stick economically where they're going wrong. But we definitely, as small as we are, and as small, comparatively speaking, as our carbon footprint may be on this planet, we are still contributing to the problem. I'm sure all of us can probably say we were so happy when it was announced by the Bahamas Investment Authority the other day that they denied that that mining project for Andros that was proposed. Our government should never be even considering projects like that while we are yet talking about preserving our environment and or saving our country. Because for me, if the forest help to take carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, which they do, as well as the mangroves, etc., why allow any industry in your country that is going to actually essentially eliminate the very mechanism that is going to help you to reduce your carbon footprint? So I think we really need to put pressure on the government of the day to, and we the people, in respect to advising or guiding them or instructing them or telling them or demanding of them to start being honest and real. And you talk about solar energy, they need to do more to speed that up. Okay? We talk about so many things that we can do, the small steps that will make the big journey complete. I don't know if any of you gentlemen may have seen this article I'm about to refer to, and I can't remember the date. But a few months ago, in the Nassau Guardian, I came across an article online that talked about the increased pace of sea level rise in this region, they said, because of the melting of the polar ice caps.
Right.
Did you happen to see that, Michelle?
No, but go ahead. Keep, because you getting as far as Sea Island now. You get a little long-winded. So go ahead.
But I can try to well, yeah, big boy. I can try to make it quick, Michelle. But the thing here is, when we are going to go to the world and asking them to be responsible, we truly have to do so. And I would like to hear from, we have to do so ourselves. I'd like to hear from both of your guests if they can name three areas, and I mean real quick, other than the dump, that we can implement right now nationally to reduce carbon footprint in the Bahamas. I'll hang up on that note, Michelle. Thank you.
All right.
Let me answer that. Yeah, I'm saying that. See, this is not to criticize JT, right? But I think what we need, and oftentimes, and this is one of the greatest problems we have in the Bahamas, is that we have so many distorted variations or perspective of exactly what we need to do and what's going on. Right, and I'm saying that I'm not just talking about carbon credit. We're talking about even just from our national development, and we say tell government we have to become informed about what we have to do, and begin to ask government to do what government intends to do. Government job is to legislate to policy and programs. And so we have become dependent on what government must do. And this is where you have government now trying to assume the role of managing these carbon credits. The ideal circumstance for this carbon credit management right now is not to have government whose job as a 5-year celebrity circuit is to be reelected, is to have a sovereign wealth fund for which we assign these assets. All assets in the Bahamas should be assigned to a sovereign wealth fund, including the carbon credits and the carbon offsets. And it goes as such. All known and unknown, all seen and unseen, all tangible and intangible assets in the Bahamas should be given to a sovereign wealth fund, and then we can hire or create sovereign asset management to do these things, and government could go back to legislation, policies, and programs. Because government is the one that gets us. You never look to the people who create the problem to actually solve it with the same mindset for which they have created it. And so and you look at government today, they're the same people who, when individuals like myself and others, who 20, 25 years ago was talking about carbon credits, was talking about seagrass, was talking about the COPIS and talking about these things, were actually the climate deniers, because we were considered tree huggers and extremists. And so we have to have a kind of like a disconnect. And when it comes to mining that he asks about, I am against 99% of all mining in the Bahamas, except when it has what is called a sustainable mining, if there's even such a thing. But we have to have a conversation, and we have to put on the bulletin board all of the things that we have to do, not just 3 things, whether it be the garbage, whether it be the automobiles, whether it be, again, when you talk about automobile, you need we could fix the automobile thing in the slightest thing just by having a unified busing system that's run by a Metro Transit Authority instead of these licenses to individuals. And so we can't keep trying to solve the problems with the same mindset we have allowed it to even be created. And so I think this carbon credit, I think our advocacy, when you say what government can do, your advocacy should be right now is that government should surrender the authority of this carbon conversation to a sovereign asset management that comes under the authority of a sovereign wealth fund.
Right.
So
they want to create a sovereign wealth fund. You want them to do all of that, man? You asking for too much, buddy.
But a sovereign wealth fund is nothing more than legislation. See, again,
yeah, but you asking for too much, Alan. You asking, you got to take hey, you want a mile? You got to get a first step out of these guys.
But I'm asking you a question. Who is government though? See, we always talk about government as if there is some real thing in the.
It's the people who are elected. That's what we're talking about. They are the ones who get the shots.
So the problem is not government. The problem is our perception of what government is and how government should be run. They don't run in absence of the people. And that is where the problem is. And this is where the problem is. And so when we realize that we don't give them power as much as we say they have the power. No, we don't. If they have the power, they wouldn't come back to us in 5 years. We give them the authority to act on our behalf. We, the people, always maintain the power.
We know that's the ideal way it's supposed to be.
No, that's the real way. The fact that we may not operate.
How is it being? No. The real way is how it's being done.
No, that's the practice. That's the culture. That's not real.
See, Alan, no need to get an argument over this. You agree.
But Cassius, don't tell people. See,
me and you agree. However, what I'm saying to you is, take baby steps.
If they're doing it wrong, then how to do it right?
Get work done.
Gentlemen, we can sing together, but we can't all talk together. Let's.
I'm simply saying, Michelle, let me make this point. If the first thing they said is right, you cannot manage what you cannot measure, and you cannot measure what you refuse to acknowledge or incapable of acknowledging. We're asking people to manage our country. They must first acknowledge and begin to know what they're doing wrong. And we've been doing it wrong by becoming dependent on government to do things for us, for what we could do for ourselves. And I'm simply saying government is not some fantasy thing we give a complete power to. The members of parliament, it's a very simple thing. If each of us, before our doorstep swept, meaning go and hold our members of parliament accountable, we only need to get to 20 of them to have what the majority we need to have a decision made in parliament. And we could start with 7 because the FNM, or Her Majesty's Official Opposition, will most likely capitulate to us in the immediate. And so I'm simply saying is, if Bahamians begin to be educated and informed as to what has to be done, then we can change the Bahamas, not 39 individuals or whatever amount of people in government at the time. And I'm simply saying is that it is.
We have to take a break. We're like 8 minutes past our break time. So let's take this break. When we come back, we're going to hear from the managing director of the IMF and her thoughts on this whole question of using carbon credits to offset debt ratios. We'll be back after these words from our sponsors.
Understanding your microbiome, also known as your gut ecosystem, can change everything you thought you knew about nutrition, digestion, immunity, and metabolism. Keeping your gut ecosystem healthy and balanced is essential. Ultimate Microbiome by Longevity was specifically formulated to optimize this ecosystem. It provides the advanced support your gut needs through prebiotic, probiotic, and postbiotic supplementation. Our unique blend of probiotics includes Lactobacillus and Plantarum, healthy bacteria that can help prevent harmful bacteria from taking over your gut. Increasing your gut's population of beneficial bacteria creates a more balanced gut microbiome, which has been shown to aid in weight loss, skin health, sleep, mood, and may even help with seasonal allergies. Ultimate Microbiome also promotes the production of postbiotics. Postbiotics are key to help regulate your gastrointestinal health. To enhance digestion, Digizyme Multi-Enzyme Complex, a blend of 5 specific enzymes, has been added to Ultimate Microbiome. It can help break down food so your body can better absorb nutrients. Plus, we've added our proprietary I-26 hyperimmune egg powder to aid in the elimination of disease-causing gut bacteria and help your body balance its immune response. Ultimate Microbiome, the scientific, proprietary, and holistic approach to gut health that helps optimize your body's entire gut ecosystem. To learn more, contact your longevity associate.
Welcome to Sunshine Auto, the hardest place on the planet for a rims, paint, and tires.
We are your auto superstore for rims, Lexani, Azaras, Trueform, Western, Lux, Fuel, Tracklight, Tough, Rough Racing, Velocity, Mud, All-Terrain, and low-profile tires. Cars, homes, and commercial window tinting. At Sunshine Auto, we put God first and customer is king.
Glasses love.
To stay healthy, it's crucial to make sure you get the nutrition you need every day. But it's difficult to get all your recommended vitamins and minerals from food alone. Even in the United States, 94% of people are deficient in at least one nutrient. Beyond Tangy Tangerine 2.0 by Longevity is a simple, convenient, and affordable way to help your body get the essential nutrients it needs. It's an advanced plant-driven multivitamin mineral complex that contains certified organic whole foods, trace minerals, and antioxidants. BTT 2.0 supports your body's natural defense system with a proprietary blend of energy-boosting and body-loving nutrients, plus prebiotics, probiotics, amino acids, and enzymes that support digestion. With an unusually high ORAC score of 8,000, you get even more antioxidants to help combat free radicals that can cause damage to your cells. But to get the most benefit and value from any multivitamin, your body must be able to break down the nutrients so you can fully absorb them. Otherwise, they'll just pass through your system without doing any good. Beyond Tangy Tangerine 2.0 was specially formulated with synergizing cofactors to ensure you get maximum nutrient absorption. Beyond Tangy Tangerine 2.0 is the easiest way to give your body the balance and complete daily vitamin mineral supplement it needs for optimal support of your overall health. To learn more, contact your longevity associate.
This portion of GPS is brought to you by Tiki Bikini Hut at Junkanoo Beach. Great food, cool tropical drinks, and family fun in the sun. Welcome back to GPS, Global Paradigm Shift on Global 99.5 FM. Michelle Malcolm here, along with Cassius Stuart and C. Alan Johnson. We are talking about this whole question of climate change, carbon credits, and the reduction of our national debt. The telephone number is called 3260271. 3260271, 3260271. Our WhatsApp, well, before I get there, the second number to call, 3260272, 3260272, and the WhatsApp line for text messages only is 801-0271. Text messages only, 801-0271. So the Prime Minister was in New York, where he took part in a one-day, forum put on by the New York Times, and the whole question was that of climate change, carbon credits, debt ratio, etc. One of the points that the moderator made was that the climate crisis is here in earnest. Energy transition and adaptation transition is urgently needed, he said, and that will take lots of money from rich countries to poorer countries that are not prepared for the realities of what we are seeing in places like Pakistan and Puerto Rico and Bahamas. Now, the question he asked is, where is the money going to come from to make a truly just, truly international, truly comprehensive transition to the economy that we need? Now, he gave an opportunity for the managing director of the IMF to also answer that question about what her position is on the question of climate change, but she went a step further and talked about the possibilities, in response to what Prime Minister Davis had to say at the outset of that forum. Here is what the managing director of the IMF, had to say on the matter.
The IMF, a sister institution to the World Bank, also doing a whole laundry list of things that I'm sure you could talk about. I want to know, though, when you think about exactly where the IMF's role is in all of this, some people say that while you can talk a big game from your position at the IMF, you're somewhat limited in what you can actually do. So how do you respond to that? Where are the actual levers of change that you can pull?
Try me. So, the IMF today is a systemically significant institution in the fight against climate change. Why? Because climate risks are macrocritical. They undermine macroeconomic and financial stability. And on the flip side, opportunities in the climate transition can boost growth and employment. You're asking me a question. Okay, you talk this talk. What does it mean? It means 4 things that are squarely in the mandate of the IMF. 1, we take the pulse of each and every country on a regular basis. It has a technical term. It is called Article 4 consultations. But what it means is that we come like a family doctor every year. Let's see how your policies are performing, how good it is for your people. We are now integrated with an approval, with the support of our board of directors. In this taking the pulse, how are you doing on mitigation, on adaptation, on transition? For countries that are big emitters, of course, we concentrate on a pathway to reduce emissions. For countries that are highly vulnerable, we concentrate on adaptation to climate risks. 2, we, together with the World Bank, produce what is called financial sector assessments. We actually look at the financial systems of each country. We are now integrating climate-related financial stability risks. So when we are looking at the financial sector, we do what the network of greening the banking is doing, stress testing for these risks. 3, data. If we don't make emissions and vulnerability integral in macro data, policymakers, investors, and citizens would not know where are we headed. So we are working on making it so that when I come to see you, we talk about growth, employment, inflation, balance of payment, deficit, and carbon intensity, vulnerability to climate shocks. And 4, we are a financial institution. We have to put money where our mouth is. This October, we are going to launch our Resilience and Sustainability Trust. It would be 40 billion at the start. And what it would do is to support countries in this transition. And I want to make the most important point I would make today, and it is the following. How much money do we have in climate action? You gave the number, 350 billion. How much more we need on an annual basis? 5 to 10 times more. This money, the difference between what is needed and what we are getting, not going to be fixed by our 40 billion unless this 40 billion is directed to remove barriers for private investment in emerging markets and developing economies on a scale. So I don't want you to hold us accountable for how much money we spent. You have to hold us accountable what is the leverage impact of this money. And so I want to come in 5 years and tell you, leverage impact is at least 1 to 5. And if it is 1 to 10, I would expect you guys to cheer me.
Okay, in fairness, Kristalina, do you believe in the scientific consensus?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yes, I do. Climate change is very clearly a product of our own making.
Thank you for answering the question.
So So clearly she didn't have any problem answering the question. But gentlemen, what are your thoughts on the 4 points that she made as it relates to this whole question of where's this money going to come from?
I think what she basically summed it up, in her statement is that, risk. She used the word risk. In other words, we won't be lending countries monies that are at high risk when it comes to climate issues because we know that they won't have the potential to pay back. She's a bank, remember? They are a bank and they lend countries money. They want interest on that money. And if they lend you 100 million, they want 300 million back. But if you are plagued with climate issues, then the tendency or the likelihood of you paying back on time or paying back is really higher. So that risk factor is there for them too. And so when they say they're going to institute this risk factor, is that when they look at your country, they're going to monitor whether or not you're eligible. And so just like how they have these different credit ratings, A, AA, AAA, triple C, BB, DE, and how we down to junk status now, I suspect they'll put another rating there based upon that climate risk factor so that whether or not you're eligible for loans. And so the issue is for me though, I think, hearing everything she is saying, knowing exactly what she's talking about, like I begin to say that there's no such thing as a free lunch. The IMF and the World Bank, they ain't interested in us, they're interested in making money, basically. So, but I don't want the prime minister to get bogged down running around the world, running around these rich countries begging for money. I want you to come home to figure out how do we build this agricultural sector. I want us to figure out how do we build our manufacturing sector. How do we strengthen our trade? How do we get this educational level from a D to an A? How do we build our sports? How do we make sure maintain the infrastructure that we have? How do we reduce our trade deficit? And so for me, though, I think more effort should be put on building your country instead of looking for free money from these rich countries. Because what happens is that, like I've been saying, is that you become a begging nation. And so when you then spend that $1 billion they give you, then what? You can go beg for some more? You don't produce productivity. You need to create a nation where your citizens or your individuals are productive, where you have people in the technological industries that are developing apps and developing applications, understanding how do we now build a whole cadre of young people out of UB and out of the colleges and out of the schools to be able to send them into developing worlds to use their talents. How do we strengthen this agriculture sector? We bring in about $1.3 billion worth of food every year. How do we subvent that? How do we mitigate double mitigation? How do we mitigate spending all that money outside and help our local farmers here? We have to put monies into building the farms here. And so we have to build our country. Right now, every single day for the past week, I probably heard about a murder every day, right? Every single day. We are not building a nation. Our country is failing on all fronts. But you figure you can beg for more money, go around the world. No, just build our country. If we get money from carbon credits, that'll be a plus. Thank you very much, sir. We'll take that 100 million. We'll take that 200 million. But we ain't dependent on you to build our success. I am scared because he's building a nation where we are dependent on them to reduce our deficit. We are dependent on them to live. No, I will not be a begging nation. This country will be a nation where we build it for our own hands. Yes, we got ourselves in this debt. Let's get ourselves out of this debt. You think them white countries won't give you money and they figure when they give it to you, you can waste it again? And that's exactly what we can do. Because when they gave us the first time around, we wasted it and we squander it. Every election after election, when we get a new administration, we figure out how the last administration squandered money. Look at the last administration, how much money they squandered. Then go back to the one after the PLP one, they squandered money. And so don't blame the environmental issues on our lousiness of monitoring and managing our own funds. We've wasted a lot of money and we put this country in the mess it's in now. We got to dig ourselves out, we got to fix it.
Okay. Michelle, let me say, right? I hear Cassius, right? Again, I don't need the prime minister to sit in place in an office. I need the prime minister to be effective whether he's traveling or going. I'm also one to understand the way government works. The prime minister is not the answer to all things. He works as part of a cabinet who works as part of a civil service. But the problem is we don't have a structure. Everything that Cassius said can be done simultaneously. We don't do one thing, then the next thing, then the next thing. The position of the Prime Minister becoming a beggar, this is not beggars. For me, this is not a begging. This is an entitlement. We have an entitlement to the loans. We have entitlement to the compensation, for the damages that we have on it. We also have a responsibility to, if we can participate in this new economy that's being created, to actually participate in it. But most importantly from this is we have a responsibility for our preservation. And so it isn't something that you do one or the other, it's doing them all. And so when you talk
somebody said, can't we chew gum and do a layup? But we have a call on the line. Caller, welcome to GPS. We had a call on the line. Numbers to call.
Let me finish the point, Michelle.
Go ahead.
The Bahamas is very unique. It's one of the largest. It's an argument that's been made by many of us for 25 years. The Bahamas is not only a carbon sink type environment, but the Bahamas, you hear people talk about the things we possess. We have the largest mangrove in the area. In the ocean economy, from where they play in global monopoly, our exclusive economic zone is probably within the 10 most valuable in the world. The Bahamas alone, just off the coast of Grand Bahama, primarily, do $3 trillion worth of global commerce every single year. The Bahamas is one of the largest production of the purest form of aragonite into the tunes of billions of tons a year that sinks to the bottom of the ocean in that very exclusive economic zone that we talk about. These are the very tools we need, not just for ourselves to actually sustain and build back better, stronger together, but also to help those in our neighborhood. But first you help yourself.
We have a cell phone call at Seattle, and I don't want to lose the call again a second time. Caller, welcome to GPS.
Yes, good afternoon, and thank you, C. Allen. You are on point today, as usual. However, you're taking a little too long when we have two guests. We want to hear also what Cassius has to say. But your point, in my humble opinion, is like right up in the third.
Michelle, can I tell you, guys?
C. Allen and Cassius, I'm more concerned. Okay, the biggest party in this country is the people. When we unify, that we have no right to what we claim is ours. When you listen to what the preamble say, how our preservation, how we would be preserved, if we give up the preamble and the spirituality, the truth of and the spirit of the preamble, we give our rights up to nations larger than ourselves, whether it's in people or militarily or financially. Now, everyone knows, and I don't mix my words for nobody, everyone knows the majority of the assets in the country that the people have been talking about and claiming is theirs, meaning the Bahamian people, the assets, natural resources that we were claiming is ours. The international community, under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the charter itself, the charter is only 30 articles. I'm not talking about those other international papers, what they put together and trying to overthrow people's constitution. I am specifically speaking to the nation of America and Great Britain. On paper, what our Bahamian lawyers over 49 years have passed on to y'all. Amos Jr. Miller asking y'all right here, right now, as it relates to this climate change. And if things like this, number one, we're supposed to have a referendum on, Mr. Prime Minister. I'll get back to that some other time, maybe another month or two.
I need you to stay focused now. Stay focused.
I stay focused, Michelle, and close by saying this. All right, ma'am and gentlemen, I appreciate these two gentlemen. I wish I was educated like you guys. I'm only intelligent. I'm seriously spiritual. I just want the world to hear me now. America and Great Britain, y'all know our lawyers have passed on these assets to your people. What we're saying, no problem. It's enough. It's eternal. It's everlasting. It's enough to share with the people who really own it.
Okay, Amos.
I gone.
Yeah. All right. All right. Who wants to respond, or should we just?
Let me just respond, right? Because let me just dismiss this thing about it, because you say it too, Michelle, that I'm long-winded. I always invite people to go back to the shows. It's just that what I say is so profound that it keeps your mind thinking long after I finish talking. Okay? And so,
say it again.
So what happens, what I'm simply saying is that, again, this is why we are where we are, because we talk about things rather than talking to things. And we often come from an emotive type thing environment. One of the most powerful things that the lady said, the IMF said, she said data, macro data. We need to have both macro and micro data. We must look at how we participate in the mitigation even from a global as well from a local perspective. We should also look at how we do what we call shoring up, but I think what she said was adaptation. That is huge on our agenda. The question we should be asking our prime minister at this particular time is that you've had 1 year and you've had a good 6 months a long run on this climate change type environment. And clearly you're about to go this November into a boxing match with these big boys. Are you prepared with the strategy? And if a strategy or a skeletal or something exists, where is it so that people like myself and the environmental agencies and the stakeholders can actually become participants in it? Because for me, I don't see where any in-depth consultation has taken place. And we saw it where even where you have NGOs and others who was already working into the country in the environmental type environment was hamstringed for a number of times. And so I'm simply saying this is a huge multi-trillion-dollar opportunity for the Bahamas to become a major player beyond that of the Prime Minister alone. And
We're going to hear a clip from the Prime Minister in a minute, but we have another call on the line. Caller, welcome to GPS.
Yes, good afternoon, it's Mr. Malcolm Mr. Stuart and C. Allen.
Mm-hmm.
And let's forget who this is, because I really was pushing this climate fast for a little while. Of course, climate change exists. I am changing. I was 20 and now I'm 58, right? Anything that is chemically made up will change. But I agree with Cassius, and I like what Cassius is saying very, very much. Also, C. Allen. I don't see the Prime Minister begging. I see the narrative as being false as far as climate change. We could call it environmental changes or degradation. And so C. Allen knows about this, right? You have to juxtapose the debt for nature swap with carbon credits, because you make a debt for nature swap. I think the Seychelles Island was successful in that. And when you look into that paradigm, you see where that is also beneficial also. They talk about the vast amount of seagrass we have that also photosynthesize and release oxygen into the atmosphere. They also have some plankton-like organisms. I can't remember the name. I read it a little while back. They also photosynthesize. They're part plant animals. I can't remember the name. Yeah, but in other words, what I'm trying to say in short, I also spoke about anthropogenic carbon versus fossil burning carbon dioxide. We haven't done any, like C. Allen is right. Data, we have more China than data. So what happens is now, we haven't used our university, somebody mentioned that, to show where plants, or show the symbiotic uptake of carboniferous carbon versus anthropogenic carbon. We need to see these paradigms, otherwise this is a farce. And also, Ms. Malcolm, what they're not telling you, right, is calculating carbon credits is so complex. The complexities of it and the uncertainty about the science and the variabilities. Let's say a plane flies higher, it burns less fuel because the fuel goes faster. The condition of a vehicle. You cannot be, there's so many variables in calculating carbon emissions until I know that it's a farce. We know about the usury laws. I was afraid what Cassius said about borrowing money, right? And this paradigm. We shouldn't be going down these rabbit holes, but in short, right? Climate change is a global construct. It's not going to work. Don't mind them. It's because of orbital deviations. They don't want to feed the public the real narrative. You cannot tax carbon. It's not practical. They haven't arrived at a general consensus on the multiplier. This has nothing to do with me. What I'm afraid about is that we're not going and reading the research, the science. So what you see is politics, and politics, and the politicians have used the law to hijack real science. All right? Have a good day.
Thank you for calling 52. Although I want to know why they call you 52 if you're 58. But anyway.
Hey, Michelle, be careful. Because 52 and I grew up on the same block. Be careful from the area where the intellectuals of this country's come from.
So stick a pin on what you were going to say, C. Allen. We're going to take a break. And then on the other side of the break, I do want to play that clip from the Prime Minister who said something that may, in an attempt, answer that question. But you're right. It's very complicated. And as we learned in this talk, the solution that everybody's talking about does not yet exist. So you're talking about creating something from scratch that does not yet exist and what that would look like. But we're going to hear from our Prime Minister on the other side of this break. Stay with us. This is GPS.
Your body's immune system is under constant pressure from things like stress, lack of exercise, and toxins in the environment. It's crucial to be proactive and support your immune system with the nutrients it needs to function effectively. But it's often hard to get these nutrients from food alone. Introducing fast-acting Zinc Plus Immune Support by Longevity. Unlike zinc-only supplements, Zinc Plus Immune Support builds on the proven power of zinc and adds complementary nutrients to give your immune system extra support. Vitamin D helps balance the effects of zinc, while our proprietary blend of natural fruit and root extracts provides the extra help your immune system needs to work against daily stressors. And we've included Longevity's exclusive plant-derived minerals to give your body the minerals it needs, but can't get from food alone. And because Zinc Plus Immune Support is delivered in a great-tasting, sugar-free, berry-flavored lozenge, it encourages quicker absorption of all these nutrients into your body. Zinc Plus Immune Support. Zinc plus the extra support your body needs to promote a healthy immune system. To learn more, contact your Longevity associate.
Welcome to Sunshine Auto, the hardest place on the planet for a rim fence and tires.
We are your auto superstore for rims, Lexani, Azaras, Trueform, Western, Lux, Fuel, Tracklight, Tough, Rough Racing, Velocity, Mud, All-Terrain, and low-profile tires. Cars, homes, and commercial window tinting. At Sunshine Auto, we put God first and customer is king.
Blessed love.
It's gotten harder and harder to get your daily requirement of vital nutrients from food alone. Without additional vitamin and nutrient support, your health and well-being can suffer drastically. That's why Z-Radical was specifically formulated. It combines a blend of antioxidant-rich vitamins, minerals, and botanicals with the protective powers of fucoidan to help fill the gaps from lack of nutrients in your foods. The core of Z-Radical is fucoidan, a naturally occurring polysaccharide that helps stimulate immune reaction, protecting you against inflammation and oxidative stress. We harvest this powerful mineral-rich nutrient from brown seaweed, harvested only from the world's most pristine ocean waters to ensure the purest quality. It's then extracted using cold process technology to ensure maximum levels of bioavailability. Then we add essential vitamins that help to protect your cardiovascular and nervous systems and are crucial for optimal immune and neurological function. Z-Radical also includes a proprietary blend of delicious antioxidant-rich fruits and berries. This great-tasting combination helps your body combat free radical imbalances that can contribute to a variety of degenerative conditions like arthritis and heart disease. Z-Radical. Experience the power of fucoidan with antioxidant-rich berries, 8 essential vitamins, and more to provide you with potent health benefits. To learn more, contact your Longevity associate.
Welcome back to GPS, Global Paradigm Shift on Global 99.5 FM. Michelle Malcolm here, along with Cassius Stuart and C. Allen Johnson. We are talking about carbon credits, climate change, and is it possible to benefit from them for the reduction of our national debt? The telephone numbers to call, 3260271, 3260271, 3260272, 3260272. The WhatsApp line to send us a text message. It's 8010271. 8010271. Now, Prime Minister Davis recently sat with the head of the IMF and the World Bank in interview style forum with the New York Times. And one of the points that he made during that session was that every day, I'm quoting him here, he says, every day is my yesterday. He referred to Dorian, he referred to Hurricane Matthew and several hurricanes which have contributed to be, according to him, more than 40% of the nation's debt level. And his point was that today is fast becoming all of our tomorrow. The Prime Minister took the opportunity to make the case for Bahamian carbon credit payments as a solution to reducing our national debt. Here is what he had to say.
When we talk about the climate change, it's no longer a threat, as people still seem to think. It is a crisis, and it has to be addressed, and addressed now,
And
not tomorrow, now.
You now have the opportunity. I know you know David and Kristalina for many years now, but in public, on stage, when you say it has to be addressed now, what is your ask, your plea, not only to the global financial community, but to other developed nations, to the private sector? What do you need now to make your nation more resilient in the years to come so you can withstand these storms, which, as you say, we know are coming?
First of all pledges, all what I call committers, who promise that they're going to make available the monies that they said. For example, in 2015, it's supposed to be $100 billion each year. None of it has been realized to date. We who are most vulnerable are pledge fatigued. We need action, and we need to find ways and means to have the industrialized world, who have been countries who have been burning fossil fuel for centuries, that have this cloud of carbon in the air. We need the time for us to let them pay the bill for this now. In fact, I held a UNFCCC conference in my country several weeks ago for the purpose of getting the Caribbean region to be able to speak in one voice. And what's coming out of that we'll take to COP26, for example, is that 2% should be taxed on all oil exports and put into a fund to assist vulnerable countries.
Global oil exports.
Global oil exports.
There's a provocative solution.
That is one we're going to be putting forward. In addition, we think governments can't do it alone. We need a private sector. In my country, I've started a program, well, not started a program, I've set up legislation to engage Article 6 of the Paris Accord to have the private sector engage in the voluntary market, carbon market, by offsetting through purchasing carbon credits. We are now in the process of having our carbon asset verified, and soon, hopefully by the 1st of next year, we'll be on the market selling our carbon credits. For all to know, the Bahamas is one of we don't contribute to the footprint. We don't. But we bear the burden and the risk. And it has been scientifically verified that we are one of the largest carbon sink in the world. And so should we not be paid, even if you want to call us the garbage collectors, because we are collecting our garbage out there.
Yet another provocative solution. I like that. Thank you very much.
All right, gentlemen, what do you all think about those two provocative solutions as suggested by the gentleman from the New York Times?
I'm conflicted. Let me explain. First of all, let me tell you, Do you know the greatest the contributor to carbon in the world is consists of carbon? It's called man. Okay.
What is it?
Mankind. We are carbon-based creatures. 666. 6 protons, 6 neutrons, 6 electrons.
Right.
Right. So essentially, when you talk about reducing carbon, then I want us to look at the perspective of what carbon is. Look at almost everything in your home, everything. In fact, the devices in front of you, the devices we're using right now is an envelope and carbon-based type environment, and oil and everything else. So it simply means that we all have a carbon footprint. I think Mr. Davis needs to adopt an AZ type environment for the Bahamas. We need to move not just from net zero or becoming part of what is called carbon offsets and carbon credits. We need to adopt a position of absolute zero, not net zero. If we maintain what we do, and even if we were to meet the 1.5% goal, the Bahamas will cease to exist by 2030. Not 2050, sorry. So the main fact is that we don't need loans. Again, I said to you, if we are to take loans in a preferential type environment to build our infrastructure, like use an example, we have enough aragonite to actually and to talk about setting these goalposts. Because understand, we're talking about the largest area in carbon sink, right? But do you know what happens over the next 10 years? That area will be reduced drastically because as islands in the Bahamas disappear, so does our exclusive economic zone and our territorial zone. So the first thing we should be talking about conversations such as how do we peg our territorial waters, meeting the ocean rules of the ocean of the United Nations open rules by building an outpost someplace, say down by Maguana, another one in the north and other places, even expanding our area so that we can maintain this so-called environment type of thing. Because we only need to build an outpost where somebody can live for 6 months out of the year for it to become part of our permanent post. Because as an island, if Inagua, Maguana, these people island disappear, we will begin to shrink. So we will no longer be. Still under our purview, though, is our exclusive economic zone that we have yet to talk about the position that plays in this new carbon economy that's being evolved. The very fact we must pay attention, there is no definition, and there'll probably be no real true definition of these carbon credits and these carbon offset. Remember now, carbon offset is a creation of BP. BP spent more money, over $200 million, creating this thing called carbon offset and the conversation. So 52 is correct. The Bahamians have to be able to see through this, because whether we do nothing, we're still going to be affected by global warming and by sea rise. And so the question then becomes, if we are now being impacted, what is it that we will be getting for the impact we have incurred as a result of what has already been done, even since these agreements first happened?
Okay, so
this is a complicated conversation.
Yeah.
And we're just having like, hey, you might think, I feel, I believe, I heard, somebody told me, and type thing. But I think this is why I'm saying is that as a country, though, we have both the ability to become world influencers, but also to become an example of what is necessary to deal with it. Let me just wrap this up in 60 seconds.
Real quick, C. Allen, because I want to get Cassius' opinion in here.
This is a plug for Grand Bahama. The world talks about a green economy, a blue economy, an ocean economy, an aquamarine economy, all these variations, even carbon credits. There's no place more ideal in this region, I might say, even in the world, to show an example of all of these economies, maybe coming out of the brand of an aquamarine economy, than Grand Bahama itself. We have all the tools we are talking about. We have all the impact that we're talking about situated around Grand Bahama, on Grand Bahama, and above Grand Bahama. And we talk about the Grand Bahama being the linchpin for the economic rebuild of the Bahamas. You have a new economy, carbon economy, and the trillions of dollars coming to birth. This is a time for us to have a real conversation of how we fit in.
All right. Cassius, I know you had some burning thoughts you wanted to express.
I forget what I had to say. See, Alan, boy, you could talk long now. My God.
That was exactly 2.5 minutes. I have a timer.
Good.
Digest it afterwards.
You know, I heard the Prime Minister say we are the largest carbon sink in the world. I'm not sure where he got that data, but I'd like to see that to really verify that. But you know, he said that there are a lot of pledges around the world who pledge $100 billion, and we ain't seen none yet. That should tell you that they ain't interested in giving us no money. They say these things when we have a storm to make themselves look good, but they're not giving up money. It's like that easily. And so for me, I think our focus should be heavily on building what we have, focus on building the industries that we have, furthering our trade with Africa, furthering our trade with the Caribbean, looking how do we can cross-pollinate agriculture sector with different Caribbean countries. How do we look at opening up trade with Africa, further trade in the South Pacific? We could expand on a lot of the Lomé Convention, the Lomé Convention, the Caribbean Basin Initiative. All these trade agreements have been there for a long time. How do we reduce our trade deficit? I export products from the Bahamas to Costa Rica, but I have to ship them to Miami. It costs me almost $700 just to ship 3 small boxes from here to Miami. And so basically that kills global trade. That kills trade deficit. How do we mitigate and how do we offset these kind of things so that we could easily flow trade from the Bahamas to the U.S.? We have the Caribbean Basin Initiative, which means any products manufactured in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas have duty-free rights into the United States of America. We don't get into that. We don't manufacture nothing. We cannot build a nation worrying about what these countries pledge. If they pledge and they give, they give. If they don't give, that's their prerogative to give. And so you can't beat them with a switch and make them give. And so for me, I think our focus is a little skewed because we got to focus on building our own country. And I'm not going to repent or relent on that because I understand how us Black people go. We like affirmative action. We like welfare. We want something for nothing. We don't want weight. We want it for free. That is not the perspective in which I stand. I stand on building our country with our own hands. When we build our agriculture sector, nobody can take that from us. We grow our own peas, our own corn, our own tomatoes, our own watermelons. We grew that with our hands. That's what we need to do. How do we build our manufacturing sector to benefit from Lomé Convention, to benefit from the Caribbean Basin Initiative? There's also a trade agreement between the Caribbean and Central and South America. Have we ever benefited $1 from any of these trade agreements? No, because we lazy. We want somebody to give us something for nothing. That's not how to build a country. And so for me, my last statement on this show is that while we talk about, you know, the carbon emissions that it's causing global warming and causing the earth to heat up and causing the earth to react, there is one factor that we are missing. And the very same people that are pushing this global agenda is missing that as well too. Human behavior within planet Earth is also a factor that is causing the earth to respond. Abortions, the way we kill babies and we unrepentantly kill children, all the murders in the streets, our behavior, our sexual immoral behaviors, all that is causing the earth to react. The earth is a living organism and human behavior causes it to react. And so when you see the earth heating up or floods or hurricanes, it's because perhaps it is angry at what we're doing, not just burning carbons or burning fossil fuels. The way we act to one another, every day murder in the streets. Scriptures tells us that the blood of human beings cries out from the ground, and the earth will spit us out if we don't get our act together. Perhaps that's what the earth is doing because we need to get our act together. So while we talk about we want to blame the coals, why don't we blame ourselves? Why the people who pushing this agenda don't blame the fact that they're pushing abortions and pushing sexual immorality in our schools and around the world? That is what is causing the problem as well too. Amen. I finish.
Okay. We're quickly running out of time.
No, I don't remember time. Michelle, 60 seconds. If we look, and I understand, I always hear about this so-called industry in the Bahamas, right? It's a fallacy. And I would love to debate anybody on any individual about manufacturing and all these other different things. We don't have the raw resources. We do, however, have some things that we could be good at. But the fantasy that we're going to be competitive in these type of environment, you know, we conflate and convolute food security with food sovereignty. All of these different things. And this is where I say data, information. But going back to the world economy and industry, this is why it's important for preservation first. You can't participate in any industry, including the carbon industry, unless we continue to exist. And so we must look at how do we preserve our country to even participate. So when you look at the global economy of everything that we exist, as if though the world is going to cut itself from carbon emission type environment, it's a fallacy in the next 100 years or whatever. Everything from the forks, the phone, the microphone, the plates, your furniture, your comb, your fake hair, all of that is based in the carbon type environment. So the key then is for us as a country, let's forget what the world is doing. We must look at sustaining ourselves so we can participate in the conversation and moving to absolute zero, as opposed to say net zero, meaning you continue doing what you're doing and we'll find things to somewhat mitigate it. We need an absolute zero strategy, and that's what the Bahamas should be leading the world towards, an absolute zero strategy, as opposed to a net zero. Following, we should be leading.
All right. I had pulled all these clips. Obviously, we're going to have to do a part 2 to this because I'm not going to get them all in part 1.
I think it'll be a part 10.
Here's what I will do. I will let the final word go to our Prime Minister, because one of the things that he did point out is no matter where you stand on this position, one of the things that he pointed out is that it is in the best interest of the larger countries, the countries that are the culprits as it relates to this whole question of those who have the biggest footprint. It is in their best interest to act. He called it, I think, enlightened self-interest. I will give him the final word. Here is that clip.
First of all, the multilaterals have to appreciate that the vulnerable countries like ours, they place upon us this, what I call this debt to GDP ratio, debt sustainability, and they have a recommended percentage for that. Most of the vulnerable countries today are far above that. When I took office last year, my debt to GDP ratio was 105%. Fortunately, I brought it down now to about 85%, and it's still going down. So they have to revisit this debt sustainability issue in the context of adaptation, mitigation, loss, and damage, particularly when it's as a result of climate change. That's one thing I think they need to do. In framing the question as well, we speak about climate justice, which basically is climate justice and fairness. And perhaps the time has come for us to maybe reframe it, to let these industrialized countries appreciate that, I call it enlightened self-interest. Mm-hmm. What I mean by that, enlightened self-interest, if we continue on the path that we are, we're saying that we have to contain temperature rise by 1.5% to 2030, and by 2050, we want to go to net zero. Well, if we don't do that, you mentioned the word transition, we're not moving quick enough to get to where we want to be in 2030 or 2050. Well, let's look at these industrialized countries, think about it. A report says that if climate change and the consequences of it continue the way we are, the world GDP loss will be about 18% within the next, 10, 15 years or more. Think about migration. We become climate refugees. It is said that there's about 3.5 billion persons in vulnerable countries. And if they are impacted, as I did at Dorian 3 years ago, we'll become climate refugees. You see what the migration is doing now in Europe. It's impacting the political dynamics in most of these countries. Look what has happened in Central America. Over the drought that has hit it over the last several years. The borders of the United States speaks to that. And that too will have impact on the political dynamics here in the United States. So if you don't do anything, your own self-interest ought to be heightened by the fact that these are realities that's going to face you. And you're facing it as we speak. So when these 3.5 billion people have no place to go, because they have lost the Bahamas is 100,000 square miles of ocean. It's an ocean state. 80% of my land mass is a mere 3 meters above seawater, sea level. All right? If nothing happens, if we're lucky, we will be climate refugees.
We have to cut it because time is gone. It's 4 o'clock. Got to get out of here. I want to say thank you to C. Alan Johnson and Cassius Stuart for joining us on GPS today. We obviously have to continue the conversation at a later time. I'm going to call you guys to schedule. Until then, I'm Michelle Malcolm. Join us tomorrow for an open line show, TGIF, where you get to be my co-host and we discuss the week that was. Until then, take care, everybody. Have a good afternoon.
Global 99.5 FM reminds our listeners that the views and opinions expressed on this show are those of the host and guests and not necessarily the opinions of the owners of Global Communications Network and the operators of this radio station.
This is 99.5 Global FM, your number one source for R&B in the Bahamas. Yeah.